Let's hit it.
We'll start off talking about the best cups for carbon steel and 4130 chromoly. Starting off, just padding beads on plain carbon steel 1/4 inch thick. I'm using a 7 clear cup here, starting on the very end there. I like to use this shot in videos. I find it really instructional because I'm doing most everything right. I've cleaned the metal. I'm going along at a steady travel speed. I'm shielding the hot tip of that rod with the argon. I'm keeping an arc length that's just about equal to the diameter of the electrode, a good rule of thumb, and my torch angle is consistent. I get to the end, I back in a little bit as I taper amperage. Now, let's look at a lap joint. I'm doing the same technique here. I'm using an 8 Pro here, but using the same exact technique. Everything's pretty much the same. I'm just on a lap joint instead of padding beads. Arc length is consistent, about the diameter of the electrode. Torch angle is consistent. I'm keeping the hot tip of that rod shielded with the argon. That's keeping the puddle clean. It's a good instructive shot. Here's an instructive shot on what happens when you don't use a tight arc length. When you use a long arc, you're not taking advantage of the pinpointed heat of TIG welding, and things don't go right. Your rod blobs in there instead of feeds in there. All I did here, same amperage, same everything, was tighten that arc length up, and you can see the tremendous difference. Everything gets more controllable, more precision. Here's another example of using an 8 Pro clear cup on carbon steel on a turntable. Here I use 2 pulses a second just for making a good looking weld. 2 pulses a second with a 60% background current because I didn't really want to limit the heat that I put in there. Pretty thick stuff. I just wanted to make a good looking weld. Those settings worked pretty well. A Jazzy 10 clear cup is also a really good cup to weld carbon steel in 4130 with. Here I'm doing multiple layers, padding beads again. Here's another shot emphasizing the importance of arc length. Kind of shows you exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about arc length there. But I'm keeping that hot tip of the rod shielded with argon. When you're doing multi-pass welds like this, having that extra argon really helps that next bead go in better. Here's an outside corner joint using the Jazzy 10 clear cup. Pay really close attention here. I'm coming up on the very end, and this is a technique that I use on ends of corner joints and most joints. In fact, when I get to the very end, about 3 or 4 dabs before I start letting off the foot pedal, last dab or two I might leave the rod in there, and then I back in as I taper amperage. Makes for a nice little ending. The Jazzy 10 ceramic is one of my favorite cups for carbon and chromoly and even stainless. It's a really durable cup, and it works great, and it doesn't really require much more gas than a standard number 8 gas lens. It lets you use a lot longer electrode extension, which kind of lets you see everything better without bending your neck over and having a sore neck at the end of the day. That's a lap weld in 11 gauge cold rolled steel. Those are the settings. Take a quick look at this thing. It's those diffusers that really make the difference. Those added diffuser screens is kind of a unique design. They can push argon out a long ways. No trouble to use 3/4 inch stick out. You could probably get by even with 1 inch if you set your gas right. And you need to sometimes for getting in those tight angles. Just doing a coped joint on some DOM tubing like this, you're going to get into some tight angles. You're going to need to use a long stick out. Jazzy 10 is just about perfect for that. And you can see that big area of argon shielding right there. The Jazzy 10 ceramic is also a really good cup for 4130. Here I'm welding a cluster practice piece from Overkill Racing and Chassis. My friend Joel over there sells these for people that want to practice and get their hand in motorsports. It's a fun little practice, and here I'm pumping the foot pedal, pulsing with the foot pedal just for kicks. Surprising what good shielding you can get with this number 10 cup. A single pass weld, like on a cope joint like this, kind of out of position, lets you extend that electrode again. Not so much that you need to, but just for visibility, so you don't have to bend your neck too hard. TIG brazing with silicon bronze goes a lot better when you have really good argon shielding and clean metal. They both go hand in hand. You want to keep the oxides out of that silicon bronze puddle as much as possible to make a good looking aesthetic weld, or braze I should say. Here's some settings that I found that really help to do that. Just 1 pulse a second, and your background current about 30%. And what that'll do is just let you use lay wire. Here I'm using a 3/32 lay wire, and I'm just moving ahead just a little bit on the high pulse part of it. And then when it backs off, it kind of controls the heat. Keeps a lot of those oxides out of the puddle, makes for a shiny braze joint. That brings me to the Furick 12 clear, also known as the FUPA 12. Sometimes you just need a really long stick out. In this case, this job was done on a little turntable, so when that little fitting comes around there, if you don't have a nice long stick out, it's going to arc out on your diffuser screens or whatever. So being able to use a really long stick out sometimes is super important. Here's another little clip of using the Furick 12. I find it's kind of a rare thing when I need to look through the clear part of the cup, but occasionally I do, and occasionally it helps. The main benefit, though, is that large shielded area of argon. Furick 12 ceramic is more of a workhorse cup, really great for 4130 chromoly and almost any application where you need good shielding and a long stick out. That brings us to stainless steels. A lot of the same cups we used on carbon and 4130 can be used on stainless steels, and kind of, I guess you could say, a rule of thumb is to bump up the size of the cup just a little bit for stainless. Whatever you would use on carbon, just bump it up a little bit for stainless. Usually you need a little bit better coverage on stainless. It really helps on multi-pass welds like this to get really good shielding on that first pass, so the second pass flows in there a lot better. It's kind of an oxide-free weld that you're welding over that way. I'm using about 25 CFH for this job here. I'm only at about 95 amps. Stainless requires just a little bit less amperage than carbon steel. And when you're doing a little surface weave pass here, it doesn't take that much amperage. Here's a single pass weld on some coped stainless tubing, some 304L tubing. Good rule of thumb on any kind of stainless like this is get that puddle moving within 2 seconds. That'll kind of prevent heat buildup. If heat builds up on you, sometimes you just can't outrun it. You got to stop and let it cool. We'll do this very same weld here with the Furick number 12 ceramic. There won't be a whole lot of difference, but if you need to use a longer stick out, you can just turn the gas flow up a little bit and you can get a little bit longer stick out with the number 12. You'll see just a little bit of difference here on this weld. Not much, but a little bit of better shielding. So when I get finished with the weld here, plus you can see right behind the cup there, it's pretty much silver, hardly any discoloration. You don't always need that, but sometimes you do. Let's take a quick look at an outside corner joint on 11 gauge stainless with the clear version of this cup. Both amperage and travel speed play a big part in how much discoloration you're going to get. And here you can see my friend Roy Crumrine is motoring out pretty good on this little stainless joint and got hardly any discoloration using that Furick 12 clear cup. The MK14 ceramic cup is a really good choice if you are taking an aerospace welding test. We put together a kit here called the Navigator kit. This is a ceramic version. It has the MK14. This kit contains some of the most used, most purchased, most useful Furick cups. MK14 is just one of them. If for some reason you've got an aerospace welding test in your future, you want to get some practice, you're likely to use a cup similar to this on an aerospace welding test, at least in my experience. And that brings us to aluminum. One of the favorite cups of a lot of the people that I know is a standard 5 collet body. Some people like collet bodies for aluminum, others like gas lenses. It's just a matter of preference. Sometimes I like to prepare a tapered tip by adjusting the AC balance with a lot of cleaning and just barely balling the end like that. That seems to work pretty well for a lot of aluminum jobs. Gives you a lot of cleaning action and the tip stays the same from start to finish. Often anyway, not always. Aluminum's a weird animal. Sometimes your tip just misshapes. But a number 5 cup, can't go wrong. This is my friend Brad Goodman doing his pedal pump technique on an outside corner joint on a dog feeder. He loves a number 5 cup. Can't argue with that. Let's do some thin metal now with a number 5 clear cup. I only needed about 38 amps for this because there were some little tiny gaps in the fit up. I used 200 hertz on the frequency, 33% cleaning. And I use a little technique that looks something like this, where I just raise the arc just a little bit when I'm adding filler, and I back up just a little bit, because again, there are some tiny gaps in this, and as I backed up while I added filler, that kind of prevented me from keyholing out or blowing through. Here's some much thicker metal, 1/4 inch lap joint. Watch how I'm adding filler and really watching and filling in all the way up to that top corner so I don't leave any scallops. My friend Brad Goodman likes to use the pulsing with the pedal, or pedal pumping he calls it. He's not really letting off the foot pedal a whole lot, maybe 20%. And that just lets him stack those dimes and lets him control the heat, especially on the end of an aluminum joint like this. Can't argue with the results. Here's Brad doing a lap joint with a number 5 gas lens. Same technique. It's just not lighting up the whole area around the puddle quite as well as that number 5 clear. Gets the job done just fine though. Number 7 clear cup, the 7 Pro Clear, works great on aluminum too. I really like this shot here because it's very instructive. Sometimes I don't even realize it, but I've kind of settled in on this little technique here where I lift the arc a little bit while I dab. And if you think about it, when you dab the filler, it makes the puddle grow in height, and it can grow right into the tip of your electrode if you're not careful. So that little technique saves me a lot of sharpening electrodes. Let's talk a little minute about gas flow rate and cleaning action. We were doing this outside corner joint here using a number 7 clear cup and getting a little milky puddle. So we decided to kind of test the argon flow and seeing what gave us the optimum cleaning path. Same cup, same AC balance setting. It looks like somewhere between 25 and 30 is the optimum setting there. So once we set it about probably 28 CFH, the puddle cleaned up a lot. Everything went better. We were able to use a long enough stick out to where we could get a good arc shot like this. And this is my friend Andrew Carden doing his thing. Watch this end right here, this ending of this. I'll show it again here in half speed in just a second. This is good and instructional too on how to end a joint, an outside corner joint on aluminum, or almost any lap joint, T-joint, anything. As you get toward the end of a joint, you got to really watch it and start backing off your foot pedal. And the very end, you will add a drop or two of metal and swirl the arc to keep from leaving a crater eye or crater hole. That's always a good technique. The number 8 Pro is also a great cup for aluminum when you need a little bit longer stick out. You can push that electrode out there and push some argon out there a little bit better. You don't want to go a whole lot bigger than an 8 though for aluminum. This is an 8 Pro clear cup on a lap joint. 1/8 inch thickness. Just like I showed earlier with the steel, I'm trying to keep my arc length about 1 electrode diameter. Keep my travel speed consistent. I know a lot of you don't weld titanium and might not ever weld titanium, so I save that for the very end. Right now though, before we get into titanium, I want to talk about the most important thing that you need to know when you're shopping for cups or a new TIG kit, and that's what type torch you have. The convenience of a kit is that everything in that kit is going to fit your torch, but you got to know what kind of torch you have. So let me take about 1 minute and really simplify that. These are all different brands and shapes of 17, 18, and 26 style torches, but they all use the same hardware. Best way to tell what type torch you have is with the collet and collet body. If it looks like this, almost 2 inches long, you've got a 17, 18, 26 style torch. And if your collet and collet body are really short, like 7/8 of an inch long, you got a 920 style torch. We've got kits for both, but since most TIG welders come with a 17 air-cooled torch, we'll talk about how to adapt. You need an adapter kit. First thing, the cheapest way to get into using Furick cups is just get this adapter kit. It lets you use all the cups with your 17 style torch. This is a standard setup here. You're not going to be that happy with it. You can't get in tight spots with it. But you do have to change out the insulator with the one that comes with the kit. It comes with 2 insulators because one's for CK torch and one's for all other torches. I got an O-ring on there for clear cups. I'm moistening it, slipping the clear cup on there. I'm ready to go now with a clear cup. All I need to do is take that O-ring off and screw any ceramic cup on there. Now it fits in a lot tighter spots. It feels better in the hand, gives you a better angle. And like I said, we have kits for each size, but now that you know exactly how to identify your torch, all you need to do is pick the right kit.
Titanium loves argon, and you got to go into welding titanium with the mindset of it doesn't matter how much argon it takes. I'm not trying to save argon here. I got to get a quality job done. So you need argon on the front side in a larger envelope with a larger TIG cup than you would use for stainless steel. And you also need it on the back side for any full penetration weld and even any weld that's going to get really red hot on the back side.
The BBW ceramic is a really good choice for titanium. You can use a really long stick out. It's about 1 inch diameter. It's a number 16 cup. Here I'm welding a practice titanium joint in a cobbled up fixture that I made many years ago when I just was in a pinch and had to get started testing some welders. But you can see the shielding that's behind this is the thing that matters. Good shielding on the front side, good shielding on the back side. It comes in the clear version also with this big brass insert here. Looks a lot cooler, does pretty much the same thing. I'll show a sped up version of that, but you see the good shielding. Got a silver weld. You're shooting for a silver weld with titanium. Some codes allow a little deviation from that, but you can't go wrong with a silver weld. This is my friend Mike Zancanato welding on a titanium bike frame, taking his time. The main thing here he's shooting for is a silver discoloration-free weld. And that means holding the torch still with a really long post flow, like a really long post flow. You got to be patient with titanium. You want to pull your torch away and discolor that weld. You want about 30 seconds of post flow there. No discoloration at all. There is an unbreakable high temp thermoplastic version of this cup that he calls a sippy. And if you got clumsy people around the shop, this might be an option for you. Again, you need a purge on the backside of titanium. We've got a new Weldmonger dual flow meter with lifetime warranty that'll help you get there. I'm going to crank this up to about 35 CFH on the cup and about 10 or 15 on the purge gas. We'll be using about 49 amps, and I'm maxing out the post flow here. I'm going to show the technique for coming to the end of a titanium weld here. I'm going to let it run just halfway to the end of that tack, and then I'm going to back inward as I taper amperage. Then I'm going to let it completely off, and I'm not going to budge. I'm going to let that post flow run until it's completely done, timed out. And that'll give me a decent weld. No crater hole, no discoloration on the weld. That's what we're looking for. So here comes that clumsy guy, and that's what you don't want to happen with a glass cup. But this cup survived it, no problem. And that's the benefit of the sippy.